First, let's get started by looking at some of the basics of scholarly searching. And we'll start off by discussing how scholarly searching is different from using Google. If you're like me, you use Google every single day of your life, and it's great if you want to look up sports scores or buy a pair of shoes, but it's not as useful if you want to do scholarly research. In Google, you could just ask a question. You could just say, who introduced the Schreiber theory? And you'll get results. Whether they're good results or not, that depends, but you'll get something. In fact, you'll get millions of results, probably too many. In library databases, you don't want to use every word. You don't want to talk to it like it's a person. So the word introduced might not necessarily be specific enough to your particular topic for you to use. A word like who is not related to the Schreiber theory. So that's not a word that we want to ask the system to look for. I've also put Schreiber theory in quotes because I want those two words in that specific word order. This way I'll be searching for a phrase as opposed to separating those two words. I see students doing this a lot. Professor says that they want a scholarly article, in this case discussing green screen technology and its impact on special effects, and that's exactly what they put into the search bar. But just like you don't start out writing a paper by saying, I shall now write a paper, these people, when they write a scholarly article, don't actually use the words scholarly article in their article. So those aren't words that you want to look for. So instead, I'm going to look for green screen, and again, I'll put it in quotes, but I'm also going to think about the words that are more commonly used in the industry. So one of the things that you're learning in school is the vernacular of a given field. What is the language that that particular field uses? So scholars are more likely to use chroma key. So if I do a search using those words instead of just the generic green screen, I'm more likely to get the results I'm looking for. So a couple of quick tips. Start out broad and add your terms or limiters one at a time. You don't want to throw everything in at the same time because you could end up with no results and you won't be sure why. So add a word and see what that does. Take away a limiter and see how that might affect your search. You want to make sure that you're being flexible. It's an art. It's not a science. You're not necessarily going to find one right, perfect way of doing a search. Also, like I said, consider synonyms, especially those words that are used in the industry. Don't write your full thesis. Check your spelling. If it wasn't for spell check, I'd still be in English 1100. This right, they'll say, oh, did you mean such and such? And by the way, we've already done the search for you. Library databases will assume however you've spelled something that's what you're looking for. So if you misspell something, especially a theorist's name, it's just going to say that there are no results. Always double check. You also want to avoid punctuation. Remember that library databases read punctuation differently than humans do. When a human sees a sentence that ends in a question mark, they say, oh, you're asking me a question. When a library database sees a sentence that ends in a question mark, they say, oh, you're giving me a command. Since we're not in library school and I don't expect you to memorize library commands, you can just ignore them.
How do you get from a research question to a pile of useful articles? Magic! Wait, no, what am I saying? It's keywords, or key phrases if you have more than one word. Keywords are index terms. The word index comes from Latin, meaning pointer finger. Index terms point the way for a computer to retrieve a particular document from a database. 2 to 4 keywords or key phrases are usually sufficient for a search. This isn't a case of more is better. It's a case of the right amount is the right amount. Only use 1 keyword and you'll get way too many results. More than 4 keywords and you might not get any. 2 to 4 keywords will hopefully yield a few dozen to a few hundred results. That's the sweet spot. The quality of your keywords makes a difference too. The more unique and specific, the better. Keywords come from research questions, like this one. Are people who play video games at an increased risk of being violent? To get the answer, we need to squeeze our research question for some keywords that'll lead us to relevant empirical research. First, we take a look at the question and cross out anything that doesn't contain specific meaning. Are people who at and risk of being? Play is just the word we use to describe what someone is doing with a game, and there really aren't any other options like working a game, so it's gone. Increased here is tougher. It's getting at the relationship between video games and violence, but I'm going to cross it out too because I don't want to exclude any research that suggests video games might decrease violent behavior. I'm not trying to find an excuse to demonize video games. I'm trying to answer a question. I don't want to blame something for the sake of blaming something. Okay, that leaves us with video games and violent. These are keepers because they refer to specific concepts, and they won't bias my search results. 2 good keywords can be enough, but it's good to be prepared just in case they're not. We've gotten all we can from the research questions, so that means we gotta get creative. We take the keywords we already found and blow them up like this. Broader concepts go on top, narrower concepts go underneath. The original 2 keywords are probably still the best ones, but these others could be helpful too. Thusly armed with keywords, you can choose a database and start searching. If you don't find anything right away, don't be discouraged. Our databases contain millions of articles, and we have dozens of databases. There are more articles in a single database than you could read if you lived 5 lifetimes. Provided you've chosen a real academic topic and not something bizarre like the relationship between Beowulf and Batman, there's gonna be research out there. Oh wait, here's an article about that. Huh. If you aren't finding anything, it's because you're hunting for delicious penguins up at the North Pole. It's funny because they don't live there. Try a few different databases before you start to worry. Also, you only really need to locate one good article. Articles are written by, and I say this with love, hardcore professional nerds. They're gonna be thorough. Flip to the end of that article you found and check the references. It'll contain a comprehensive list of books and articles on your topic. You can then locate those articles in our databases, or skim the text of the article for new keywords. Maybe you can find some terminology you haven't thought of yet. For example, a lot of the research about video games seems to use the word aggression. So remember, identify the key concepts in your research question in order to produce keywords, use 2 to 4 keywords at a time, try the same searches in more than one database, and if you find just one good article, treat it like a freshly slaughtered whale carcass and mine it for everything it's worth. Ambergris.
Alright, so now we're going to move on and we're going to talk a little bit about JETfind. JETfind is a search engine that I suggest everybody from first years through faculty begin their research. It's not the only place that you're going to look, but it is the best place to start. And that's because it's going to look through all of our resources all at one time. All of the streaming movies, all of the physical books, all of the ebooks, all of the articles, everything that we have all at once. There's a couple of different ways to get there. My favorite way is by signing into Canvas first and then clicking on this little button. That will authenticate, which means that it will tell the system that you're a MLIS student. Otherwise, you may be asked to sign in or start paying for articles. You should never pay for articles while you're in college. So I'm at the library homepage, and you see right here, this is the JETfind box right up here. Now, I'm just doing a simple search for documentary film and production. If I wanted to, I could make a limit right over here, and I could say I only want to look at articles and more, which will be all of the electronic resources, anything that lives in the cloud. If I wanted to, I could look over here in the library catalog, and that will be all of the physical materials that are actually housed within the library. But the default is everything, and that will search through both of these at the same time. And that's what I've done here. All right, so now we can see my search right over here. You can see it right up at the top. If I wanted to, I could pick one of these. So I could say I'm only looking for articles, books, images, or video. And there's also all of these limiters down here on the side. And now the first thing I'll notice is that we have over 3,000 results, which is too many. I'm not going to look through 3,000 results. So we need to narrow this down a bit. I'm going to come over here to the date range, and I'm going to say the past 10 years. And I'll just set my date. And now we can see that the active filter is showing years 2015 to 2025. Now the next thing I'm going to do is choose a format. So first, let's take a look at books. So I'll come over here to resource type, and I'll come down here to books. This will get rid of any articles, videos, movies, etc. And now I'm only looking at books. So I'll click on the title of a particular book, and it's going to bring me to the record page. This has all of the information that I'm going to need to create my citations. You can see down over here, here's where it was published, who published it, the year it was published. Here is the author and the title. If I like this book, I'll click right here, and it's going to bring me to the particular database where this book is found. So I just need to log in. And now we can see, in this case, we have unlimited access to this book. Sometimes you might see we have 3 copies or 1 copy. If that's the case, you may need to wait until somebody else has finished with the book. Just like if it was a physical book, you'd need to wait for them to put it back on the shelf. So I can download books or chapters, but in general, what I tend to do is click right here and read it online. So that's what I'll do, and that's going to bring me to the full text of the book. I can just scroll down and read the whole book like this if I want to. Or I can come over here to skip to a particular page. I can also choose some text to highlight or choose some text to make notes. I'll save my notes and you'll start to see them populate on the side. One of the things that I particularly enjoy about using ebooks is that I can search through the full text of the book right over here. So I can say a particular word and I'll see it's not mentioned in any of these places, but you see it is mentioned here. That's why there's this purple in this bar. I'm just going to look and see in context the words, and it'll show you exactly where it is. It automatically highlights it. So this makes it very easy to quickly and easily find sections, so you don't have to read the entire book. Once I have highlighted, it automatically added it to my bookshelf up here. So I click on the bookshelf, and now I can see all of the different books that I've annotated. You see I have 98 here, and I can make different shelves if I want to, and then I can add books to those shelves so I can organize it very easily. And you'll see that the annotations are still available, and I can quickly jump to them in the book. So we found some books that we like. Now we want to find an article. I don't need to reinvent the whole wheel. I can lock my filter and get rid of books. And now this time I can click on peer review. So I don't have to redo the entire search. I can just do some of it. Now I'm getting results that aren't in English. So one thing I can do is I can come down here to language and pick English. And then another thing that I can do is I can come down here to the subject area. I'm just going to click on show more so I can see all of the different options. Now I said to the system, I like the words documentary films. I want you to go through the articles, and if it mentions documentary film, show it to me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the article is particularly about. It could be about a director who has made documentary films and they happen to mention it, but now they're talking about an action movie that they've made. So if I want to get to books that are, to articles that are specifically about documentary films, I'll click right here. These articles were specifically tagged as being focused on documentary films, so it's a much more targeted search. I can click on the title of a particular article that I liked. And you'll see that the record looks fairly similar to the way that they looked when we were looking for books. I still have the publisher and where it was published. Here is the title of the journal. the date, volume number, issue number, page number. Way down here, this is the DOI. DOI stands for Digital Object Identifier, and it's basically like the equivalent of a serial number for a particular article. So this unique number is specific to this article. If I really like this article, but I'm having trouble finding other articles on the same topic, I can look and see what this article was tagged with and use these as suggestions for other words that I might want to try next. Then this is my favorite way to search. When I find a particular article that I like, I can see who cited it and who they cited. And that's a quick and easy way to find lots of articles on the same subject quickly and easily. If I like this article, then I can come up here. It's housed in 2 different databases. Don't let that throw you. Either one will bring you to the right article. So I just clicked on the first link. In this case, it's bringing me to a JSTOR database. And here's the full article right here. I also like to see if they mention other journal articles that might be useful to help me with my research as well. Now remember, we've been looking at peer-reviewed articles and ebooks, but there are lots of different resources that you can look through. So maybe I might be interested in images. Now I can easily find images on a particular topic. If you're ever lost, you can always chat with a librarian in any of the databases that we're in. Just click right here and a little chat box will pop up. This way you'll be able to ask a librarian a question in the database.